Hi everyone. Expect spine-chilling tales that will make you wonder about our world's hidden truths. I think today's narrative is about a few troublemakers who can't keep their thoughts to themselves and the darker side of the adult service industry. But I hope everything I say is fiction. Start today's tale. South Korea has occupations that have existed since the dawn of time: red light districts. Tiny alleyways lined with adult service establishments illuminated up in red light, like many other countries. These sites, mostly around rail stations or downtown outskirts, exist but are illegal. After several comprehensive public power interventions and the creation of a special law to crack down on the adult industry in 2004, they were forced out of their long-established territories by urban development and scattered across residential and motel towns. Of course, these become massage parlours and office-stills that offer these services, and supply continues as needed, playing blind and deaf. A post on Mixed Martial Arts Cafe, a male-dominated online group, launched today's alarming urban legend on September 14, 2010. Story of Dream Palace Motel near Suwon Station circulated throughout the town. The 1990-born college sophomore who posted this anecdote was unsophisticated and had never held a woman's hand. This student, who got off at Dongdaegu Station around 1:10 a.m. and was walking home on the right footbridge, heard old ladies grasp his arm and say, "Come play for a cheap 30,000 won, or approximately 23 USD. He ignored it because his house was around the corner and he was going home. He then asked elderly men who might know what those ladies did out of curiosity. A user named Drift commented, "A woman who is more beautiful than any other celebrity but has no arms or legs may also come in a bag. This is real. I got off at Suwon Station during my military leave in 2001. An old woman kept saying, 'Hey, it's 20,000 won, only 20,000 won.' So I followed her in a hurry." Drift, who was told to go to the room first and was waiting with a fluttering heart, believing he would have a nice time with a gorgeous escort, gave the old lady the money up front, stating he could take his time. A travel bag arrived after 2 minutes. He opened the bag, confused, to see a lovely woman with a flawless figure and face. Drift, who didn't see anything unusual since the woman was too lovely, thought, "How can a person get inside a bag?" and saw that she had no arms or legs. After witnessing the woman without limbs in the bag, Drift rushed madly back to Suwon Station in terror. After calming down amid the crowd, he felt heartbroken and went home because he couldn't report what he was doing to her to the authorities because it was unlawful. He said he never went there again after being shocked. His emphasis was that it happened at Dream Palace, an actual motel across Suwon Station. Even his junior companion's story was added. The companion, partnered with a physically intact woman, wondered why she wouldn't take off her sunglasses. She said one eye was missing. 4 days after this surprising reply, I'll Tell You submitted a more serious and thorough account of a similar story he heard on Today's Humour. The anecdote began with, "I never thought I'd bring up this story," and was about his military service. As the newly recruited soldiers returned from their 100-day leave one by one, he heard the narrative and casually asked what they were doing outside. One man looked pale, and the junior soldier's solemnity and lack of laughing stuck with him. The username, "I'll Tell You," heard the new soldier's story after the evening roll call and bedtime. He admitted that recalling that incident still gives him shivers. After drinking too much with a friend and losing his senses, the new soldier was rolling around the motel when an old lady appeared, clearly in the adult service business. He requested a very obedient girl and paid her extra in his intoxicated state. Seeing him as a usual motel goer, The old lady smiled mysteriously and turned around, saying okay. The new soldier waiting in the motel was about to leave in fury when the old lady returned without a girl, but he stopped when he saw her holding a bundle. The old lady placed down her load, stating she was a very dutiful girl, told him to have fun and leave whenever he wanted, then exited the room. The senior soldier initially believed she brought a drunk woman. He opened the bundle to reveal a cheerful woman in her early 20s. He didn't notice anything when he undressed her to her chest, but her shoulders felt weird. Before undressing her sleeves, the new soldier discovered the woman had no arms. Considering himself intoxicated, he checked her lower body. He found it unusual, and when he unwrapped the bundle, it was her clothes, and she had no limbs. After a few steps, the soldier yelled and fell on his knees, frightened. After viewing this, she grinned and wriggled toward him, asking why. The new soldier, petrified with dread, swore and fled away, leaving the old lady laughing and asking, "Did you have fun, young man?" He was so insane that he ran away. Hysteria was identified a few days before this new soldier was discharged and transported to the military hospital. Username I'll Tell You, who wrote about this story online, claimed to have worked in adult business and moved on after a crackdown. He wasn't sure if the guy was lying. This story was laughed off by employers and executives at drinking parties who urged him not to fool around. When a freshly appointed executive changed his demeanour and asked how he knew, credibility was restored. He determined that this episode, which industry insiders either dismiss as improbable or don't reveal for security reasons, occurred 13 years ago. This scary Suwon Station story, which has been circulating for over 10 years, is defined by Dream Palace Motel. There are 2 dream palaces in Suwon. However, most of the photographs of this urban legend on the internet and YouTube channels are of the motel before it was refurbished. The hotel owners and Suwon City Hall Women's Policy Division officials in charge of adult services crackdowns also dismiss this as a lie. Even with money, cutting off women's limbs, adoring them, and forcing them to perform these services for 20,000 won is ludicrous. Similar rumours about these women missing limbs are spreading from Suwon Station to the red light district near Yeongdeungpo Station. There are also reports that a middle-aged Yeongdeungpo bar owner is holding such women in a container box. This urban legend about the Dream Palace is based on the Orléans mythology in France. Orléans, in the Loiret department of Centre-Val de Loire, is where Jeanne d'Arc's story unfolds. It suddenly became the centre of bizarre tales in May 1969. Speculation spread that if you entered the subterranean changing room of an Orleans boutique, you would be sedated and sold to overseas traffickers. Later, others claimed the criminals were Jewish, making the myth anti-Semitic. The story was later disproven by a campaign after 2 racist organizations promoted it. A Japanese traveler encountered a makeshift theatre in a distant village in China called Dharma, where a dismembered Japanese person was on stage. In this narrative, individuals exhibit humans with all except the torso, including the tongue, for money. If their tongues aren't cut off, they ask Japanese people for help in Japanese, but amid the heated atmosphere of the Chinese people, they pretend not to understand, leave the store, and return to Japan. After feeling bad, the traveller investigates the dismembered individual and discovers that it was a solo traveller who went missing in China. However, nothing has been confirmed, so we may never know if these awful urban tales are true. These tales were embellished and passed down for decades. As adult services became stigmatized and hidden, these narratives became fearful. This may have spawned the Suwon Station urban legend. It's unsettling that these women are now part of urban tales about amputated limbs and no human rights. It's terrifying. Remember that these urban legends victims are consumers who committed crimes. It's shocking how they propagate these stories, which they wouldn't tell their girlfriends or wives, as interesting. It's astounding that these online forums, the basis of these claims, suggested that immobile women would have developed amazing core strength to sustain their bodies. Our episode for today is over. If you have interesting real crime ghost stories or urban legends to offer, let us know. We appreciate your time and look forward to more terrifying stories in our upcoming episode. Stay tuned and see you soon. The World Health Organization ranks schizophrenia among the most serious mental illnesses. The disorder affects 1 in 300 people worldwide. Schizophrenics often act in dangerous ways because hallucinations and delusions affect their life. A schizophrenic man who relapsed after not taking his medication for a long time killed his Asian wife. Case of Paul Leslie Quirk. Paul Leslie Quirk was born in Australia on 8 August 1972. His childhood and upbringing are unknown. He later studied podiatry, which treats lower limb issues, to become a doctor. La Trobe University in Melbourne awarded him a degree in 2000. He married a woman soon after, but they divorced in 2001. This caused Paul depression, prompting him to see a psychiatrist. He was prescribed medication to manage his symptoms and prevent relapses. Taking tablets every 2 or 3 days instead of every day, Paul skipped medication, worsening his symptoms. He heard voices saying the world was in danger and he needed to save it. Paul's despair grew as he struggled to work and manage his illness. Paul was diagnosed with schizophrenia in 2005 and began having severe hallucinations and repeated voices. Paul attempted suicide twice after hearing voices tell him to kill himself. Paul went into remission on medicine, but relapsed in 2013 after he stopped. Since 2006, he has worked as a senior podiatrist in Australia despite these obstacles. In 2016, he abruptly moved to Singapore. He worked shifts at Punggol Polyclinic and as a senior podiatrist at Tan Tock Seng Hospital after coming in April 2016. Instagram photos show Paul doing better. Though his social life remained unclear, he exercised consistently to stay fit. He met his future wife in Singapore. Smart Christina Kukiko had a bachelor's degree in psychology from Singapore's University of Southern Queensland. Christina directed and advised a Massachusetts management consulting firm. Friends called the couple sweethearts. Christina and Paul were born on the same day, a perfect match. Christina was divorced like Paul and had a son that Paul adopted. Paul and Christina married after a year of dating. On their shared birthday, August 8, 2017, they married and lived happily. The Asparana residence at 125 Compassvale Bow was their home. Paul loved Christina, and they often went on date evenings despite being married. Paul and Christina were inseparable, and neighbours and friends never saw them fight. Paul and Christina's son barbecued together and got along. Paul joyfully announced the boys' elementary school graduation on social media. Despite his pleasant social media posts, Paul's schizophrenia worsened and he heard voices again. The magnitude of Paul's troubles remained unknown. As his illness worsened, Paul and Christina argued on January 2, 2020, about the alimony Paul owed to his first wife, which had not been handled after their marriage. It appears the couple argued over this occasionally. Paul told Christina that night he would return to Australia the next day with family who had visited him in Singapore. When the debate failed, Paul packed up and left Christina to think about it. Paul texted Christina around 3 a.m. to apologize for the disagreement and his hasty departure. He hadn't felt like himself and was perplexed about everything. Paul returned to Christina at 3:45 a.m. with his brother, who convinced him to stay with his wife. After discussing it, Paul opted to stay in Singapore with Christina. Later following morning, Christina's son went to school and Paul's family returned to Australia. As devout Catholics, the couple sought third-party guidance, believing it was the right moment to address the argument. They sought advice at the Catholic Spirituality Centre. Paul was struggling. He said he heard voices telling him to stop the problem at the Catholic Spirituality Centre so it wouldn't get worse. Unfortunately, no one seemed to know Paul's troubles, and the voices remained despite his efforts to block them. On their drive home from the Spirituality Centre, the voices told Paul that Christina was the devil in disguise and that sticking with her would upset the earth. The voices said Paul must save the world and do good. He had visual hallucination, misinterpreting a runner's shirt with finisher as finisher. Paul took a shower at home with all the voices in his brain. The voices told him to hit the beast. Paul snapped in hallucination. He approached Christina in their living area with Christina's son's martial arts sticks before midday. Paul saw Christina as a demon he had to exorcise. Blinded by his delusions, screaming, he hit Christina with wooden sticks. She yelled for aid from the balcony, shocking neighbours and passers-by. Paul dragged her inside after beating her. Paul beat Christina with a broken clothing hanger, and witnesses called the police. Christina fainted and Paul, delighted, took a 34-centimetre knife from the kitchen. He kept stabbing Christina in the neck till he thought he saved everyone. Paul then stabbed and threw the family dog out the balcony. Paul texted his brother, felt he had succeeded, and calmly answered the door when the cops arrived at 12:30 p.m. Deputy Public Prosecutor Andra Chong said Paul was bloody and claimed to be Jesus Christ who exorcised a demon. Paramedics pronounced Christina dead. Paul said that Christina was Tiamat, a demon, and that he killed her to maintain the universe's balance, his mission in life. He also said he killed the dog because he thought it was a spirit companion and may have resurrected the demon. The cops discovered Paul was mentally ill. The High Court charged Paul with Christina Quirk's murder 2 days later. Court observers remarked that Paul displayed no remorse, any other emotion. Paul was detained at Chengdu prison for psychiatric evaluation by District Judge Shifuden Sarwan. On January 24, 2021, Paul faced the death penalty in court. After another hearing on May 24, Paul was sentenced to 10 years for culpable homicide of Christina Quirk. His psychiatric state significantly diminished his mental accountability for his conduct, reducing the murder charge. A second mischief charge for killing the dog was considered. Paul was ordered to stay in prison to rehabilitate and prevent his violent outbursts. At the time, comments noted that Paul's careless prescription skipping contributed to Christina's death. While mentally ill, Paul could never cleanse his hands of blood. Christina's son has filed legal papers to prevent Paul from obtaining his inheritance, half of Asparina residences, since Paul's imprisonment at Chengdu prison. Although Christina died without a testament, her son and Paul would have inherited her fortune under intestacy laws. With a legal representative, the boy tried to exclude Paul from his share, alleging that he should not gain despite his crime. Paul's horrible behaviour hurt Christina's family and friends, who condemned him. People criticised Paul's crime on social media, and others expressed sympathy after his sentencing. The crime also highlighted the need to recognise schizophrenia and other mental problems. People who loved Christina were advised to pray for them. Today's update concludes. Thanks for watching.